Yeah. So that's really, and that kind of takes us to today, and and where we where we are, and really what we're what we're looking to build here. So with Evergreen Mountain. So that's the intro. And happy to kind of take it in any direction you'd like.
Yeah. Just a few questions come to mind as I was thinking about your launch and the team that you're building, and obviously you have a co-founder there, Ira Grossman. I presume you met back at the People Answers days and Infor,
Yep.
part of that whole process.
Yeah, so it was interesting. So Ira and I actually, People Answers was just getting off the ground. This was back in around, I'm trying to remember what year this was, around 2001, which used to not seem like forever ago. And now it's ridiculous how much time has passed since then. But yeah, Ira and I People Answers was just starting. They had no customers at the time. They had really no anything, but they had really amazing technology for the time. And we, kind of mutual friend got me connected with the original founder of People Answers, and we ended up buying the distribution rights to the product because we just loved what they were doing. So
nice.
Yeah, so that's
the first one with like some kind of meaningful AI, I think, right? 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, it was like cutting edge at the time. But again, in 2001 technology, it was really cutting edge. Like I said, I mean, if you think about pre-employment assessment prior to that point, and I'm sure probably everybody on this call has some experience with pre-employment assessment, it's been around for like 100 years, literally. And I'm not saying that jokingly. Yeah. And it's, in a lot of ways, the technology behind, the science behind it, has been very stagnant for really, for a long time. I mean, it's good, it's sound science, but it hasn't really been changing. And what we want, and it was very sort of slow and hard, right? And at that time, and there's still a lot of this today, taking a test with somebody completing a survey, and somebody else has to interpret the results, and then tell you, yeah, I think, Ward's a really good guy, you should hire him, or don't hire him, right? And, and that's really what we were looking to change at People Answers, and, was to make it just a lot easier for somebody and a lot more scalable to take assessments as a really core part of a talent acquisition process and roll it out across a large organization. Today, a lot of that is AI driven. So, I mean, the technology has just advanced so much that today, and that's really, from a venture capital standpoint, in terms of what we're doing today, that's really one of the most exciting areas that we, are really looking at, is just the ability for AI to really drive so much of these, extraordinarily manual processes that have been around for eons, and in the case of pre-employment assessment, for 100 years.
So Greg, this is Adriana Deneno. If I sound weird, I'm in my car.
It's okay.
I work as a product manager for Infor People Solutions on HR talent.
Yeah.
And People Answers, now we call it talent science, is very much a critical part of our stack. And I just want to tell everybody, like a month or two ago, my upper level management, we got this great idea that we would all take the test, and we would all learn from each other and learn about our group. And I first went into it thinking, oh gosh, this is kind of a load of hoo-ha, right? And I took the test, and my colleagues all took it. And by the end of the second session, where we went over the results with, like a talent science PhD, I was smiling from ear to ear. I feel like I really understood my colleagues more and how they tick. I feel like they really understood how I tick more. And I was like, everybody should do that. Like, so, it was cool. So congrats on the one to get that into our stack, because we still love it. So yeah.
That's great. That's great to hear. Yeah. I mean, it's, it was an extraordinary product in the very beginning, and it's still an extraordinary product today. And, it's just evolved, so much. So I'm really glad to hear that.
Outstanding. Hey, thanks for the commentary there. Just a couple of questions for you, Greg, on the fund that you're launching. I'm guessing the name has something to do with where you live.
Yeah, I live in Evergreen, Colorado. For those of you who may not have joined us in the very beginning, we were just chatting about skiing out in Colorado and stuff like that. So yeah, I am Evergreen, Colorado is about halfway between Denver and Breckenridge. So we're about 8,000 feet of elevation up here. So it's a little tiny town in the little tiny mountain town, not too far outside of Denver.
Oh, I thought it had to do with like evergreen requisition.
It's, well, you know what? It can be whatever we want it to be. But I've actually had people say that before too about, I thought it was like evergreen investments and stuff like that, which is great. But yeah, no, it's just Evergreen. Evergreen Mountain is a mountain right outside of my house, literally, that I walk out and I hike. It's a beautiful, like 4 mile, couple thousand feet of elevation hike right near my house. So, I wish there were a more interesting story than that.
Well, it's more interesting than, I guess, Ira hails from Massachusetts. There's not any really mountains there worth skiing on.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, Ira's in the Berkshires. He's in the Berkshires of Massachusetts. So it's a beautiful area too.
So we got a
question about the fund.
Yeah.
Greg, I'm curious to know, just because like there is a bunch of HR tech and there's all these buzzwords around, employee retention and culture, so on and so forth. What exactly is it that is going to, like, in your perspective, like set an organization, especially at the seed or Series A stage, apart from all the other like noise and hoopla that's going on in the industry right now?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think, so the reason that we wanted to invest around future work, one, it's because it's a space that I love. I've been in it for, my entire career, and Ira, for most of his career, he had a little stint in running a software company, and super interesting stuff. Data analytics platform for clinical oncology research. So super interesting. They sold that not too long ago to Google, or one of the Google companies. There's a ton. And I think one of the things that I've seen throughout throughout certainly in the past 5 years, more so than ever, is the pace at which very narrow siloed solutions keep coming to market, right? Which makes the market really confusing, like you said, and just really noisy. And there's a lot of like little tiny niche-y things, right? And I think the way that the market is going, if you look at what's happened just in the past 2 years within HR technology, you've seen more capital inflow into HR technology than we've ever seen before. To put it in perspective, in 2021, there was a 10x increase in late stage investment coming into the space. So that means like later stage growth capital and then large private equity coming in, right? What that has done is it's created this sort of, that's a machine that needs to get fed, right? So that's a few $billion, and you're seeing it in a lot of the huge valuations that you're seeing companies get. I mean, I don't know if anybody uses Paradox, but you may have seen they just got it's like a $1.7 billion valuation on, I think it's under $100 million in revenue. I mean, it's, we're seeing a lot of the stuff. I mean, it just blows your mind. And it's because there's so much capital flooding in. What happens is that on a lower level, that creates this really unique market opportunity for small companies to come in, define themselves as a niche, get proof of concept with companies like yours, and then get absorbed into those large platforms. So that's why you're seeing so much noise in the market, because it becomes this feeder system for the large platforms, right? So my previous company, I say my previous company, I'm still on the board and I'm still very close to it, is Outmatch. We're, in order to grow Outmatch at the pace that we need to continue to grow, we're a buyer of those kind of solutions, right? Paradox is a buyer of those kind of solutions. Workday just did a big acquisition. I mean, there's a lot of companies like that are, so that's really what causes the noise. Our job from an investment standpoint, and I think our job as HR professionals as well, is to help is to really kind of weed those small siloed organizations. Some of them are going to stick and most of them are going to go away, right? And that's just the nature of it. But that's how innovation really happens. And, it's not only in HR tech that's happening, but if you look at what's happened in like CRM, and sales and like marketing technology or sales technology or financial technology, you see that exact same dynamic. What's interesting though, is within HR technology, we're sort of late to that game, right? That kind of innovation has been happening in sales automation and marketing automation and financial automation for a decade. In HR tech, hasn't been the case. And so it's something I think as organizations, we really need to embrace that, right? Because that's where the true innovation is going to come from. A lot of these companies, you look at early stage companies, 64% of them fail, right? At around the Series A level, which is usually a couple $1 million in revenue, right? They fail. That's okay. That's part of the process that should be embraced. And it's our job as HR professionals to go in and say, okay, which ones deserve to make it through this gauntlet and which ones aren't creating the value? Because those that do make it through that gauntlet that can actually show ROI to your organizations and make a meaningful difference, they're the ones that are going to get absorbed up the chain. It's a healthy process. It's the way it should work. It's just that HR tech is new to it.
So I like that you brought up a point. Who are the founders that you're mostly talking about? Are the founders of these organizations not typically from the talent HR space?
Most of the founders that we talk to today, and this is like, completely unscientific, right? But most of the founders of the companies that we talk to today about making an investment, very few of them are actually from the HR technology space. You've got more coming in now, and this is new, right? Where this is why the pace of innovation is really accelerating. That's a good thing, because what happens is when you have founders only from the space, you see incremental movements. That's it. It's not real innovation. It's taking something we already know and trying to just make it 10% better, right? That's not innovation. When you start to have founders come in, and we're seeing this today, that are coming in with AI experience from a different space or blockchain experience from a different space or things like that, that's where you're going to see innovation occur on a different level, because they're going to think about things without that limitation of, oh, here's the way recruiting works. Here's the way technologies are supposed to work in performance management, right? So totally different mindset. You want that to occur. We need to instill that into HR. And we haven't, and traditionally that has not been the case.
Cool. Thank you for your perspective.
Yeah, no, thank you.
No, it's
Greg, I'm sorry, I've just got a quick question.
Sure.
What in your view are those micro verticals that are poised to really take off in 2022 within HR tech?
Which one of them? Do you have like one, or do you have something?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not thinking of anything, but there are several, as you mentioned, several point solutions, right? And there are many more that are coming in. So which are those spaces which are hot and which in your view are sort of worthy of investment of your fund?
Yeah, I can tell you the things that are really exciting to us, and also it generally kind of aligns with where we're seeing most of the activity, most of the earlier stage activity. I think one area is blockchain, right? Utilize bringing in blockchain technologies into recruiting. If you're not familiar with blockchain or sort of the concepts behind blockchain, you may sometimes hear it referred to as Web3 or things like that, right? But really what it, at the highest level, what it's really about is who owns what data, right? And true data ownership by an individual. And if you think, and one of the areas I think is just profoundly exciting to me is if you think about the way that HR data has been handled traditionally, if I am an individual, if I'm an employee or I'm a candidate, that's me, right? That is my data. The stuff that is being housed in this system and that system, and my review data that sits over here, my performance, evaluation notes that sit over here, and all that's me, right? And right. I deserve to own that data and use that data in a way that benefits me, right? So that's really, I think, one of the most exciting things that blockchain will enable is to put that data ownership in the hands of the individual. So that's an area that, we're looking at today. There are a few exciting things that we've seen around that space. I think the AI is, feels, I mean, it's just bizarre to say, it feels like an old story, but I think AI is one of those things that it's kind of moving from a buzzword, like, every vendor has said for years. And I, of course, did the exact same thing at Outmatch. I mean, yeah, we're AI, machine learning, blah, 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 whatever, right? But I think now today we're actually seeing where you've got sort of large data capability for the first time to really bring the power of AI. And you see, into more effective decision making. So that's an area we continue to look at. I think the other area, and this isn't actually necessarily from a technology standpoint, but the other area that's really interesting to me, and we're seeing a lot of activity in this space, and this is actually where I thought you might be going with your question, is really, really micro level solutions of like freelance marketplaces and things like that, based on very narrow segments, right? It's just it's an area today, like, particularly as freelance work now becomes the majority of the workforce, as opposed to, this fringe sort of minority. It's the majority today, right? And, or at least the majority of workers, majority of people are doing it on some level. It may not be their primary source of income. You're looking at these really, really, really narrow areas that create these freelance marketplaces that are just really interesting when you start to look at that at scale and you start to combine these things. So those are the things that, that we're looking at today. I mean, there's certainly a lot more out there, but if I had to sort of characterize what are the trends we're going to see, I think those are the areas that we're going to continue to try to invest in.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. Yeah. Do you have any investments in place today?
From the fund, we actually just launched the fund a month ago, and yes, we actually do. So we closed our first investment. We actually closed our first investment before we even launched the fund, which is just a really bizarre way to do it. I'll put in a shameless plug for them. It's a company called Truvelop, TRUVELOP. And really cool technology utilizing AI in a really interesting way. So this is really kind of a retention play, right? It's sort of a retention platform that actually collects engagement data and performance data on a real-time continuous basis. But what it actually does with that data is super interesting in that it analyzes the data, and then it feeds back to frontline managers what to do with the data. How do you use this data to actually coach and provide feedback, right? One of the biggest problems that we've seen in like traditional engagement platforms and stuff, they collect all this data, they spit it out. I mean, this would even happen. We had 300 people at Outmatch. I would get this, I'm not going to say who we use, but it's great technology. And I'd get the data and I'd have no idea what to do with this, right? I mean, it was great. I saw trend lines and the graphs were pretty and, all the stuff, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I've been leading companies for a long time. You're a frontline manager in a retail environment, or you're a frontline manager in an hourly environment. This is your first time ever managing anybody. You really don't know what to do with that data. So that's what it's doing. It's kind of taking the input, providing some analysis for it, and then telling the manager, here's how you use this data to go coach and develop somebody. So
Greg. Yeah, Pete Tiliakis here from ISG. Congrats on this, both the products that you've created. I can second the talent science piece. I've worked with Infor and seen that. It is a cool thing. I love what you guys are doing. I mean, I think as an analyst, you look at all of the influx of money and innovation. There's still a lot of work to be done, right? There's a lot of use cases to solve. There's a lot of companies that still haven't gotten their head around any of this, or even taken action. So, but one area I was just curious that you sparked my interest on around blockchain and Web3. And I'll admit I'm not an expert in this area, but like, how are you guys looking at like metaverse from an HR perspective? I mean, in my mind, you know, just from what I understand of it, I think you could see a use for it probably in recruiting, probably in learning, and I'm sure there's maybe some other areas as well off the top of my head. But is that something that you're kind of poking on? Do you think there's a viability for that for HR? Could it, you know, is it too far out to say?
It's a great question, Pete. You know, and I mean, the answer, is there a use case there for metaverse and HR? Yeah, no question about it. I am by no means either an expert in, I don't think anybody who claims to be an expert in metaverse is, you know, nobody I want to go hang out with, right? But I think they're spending too much time with goggles on their face. You know, I mean, there certainly will be a use case. My feeling, and I could be grossly wrong about this, but my feeling is we're probably at least a few years out before you see really those use cases start to develop. You know, our focus is really more on sort of the data ownership side of blockchain and things like that right now, and less on you know, really what's out there. I think what needs to happen with metaverse and what will happen is, you know, you're going to see the applications to gaming continue to increase. You're going to see the applications to, you know, I've seen a lot on like property ownership and things like that, which is so profoundly odd to me. I can't even understand it. Right. You know, there's going to be in any new technology like that, there's just a lot of points of failure that need to occur. Right. And, you know, we saw it in AI, we saw it in, you know, they were trying a lot of things. And when it goes wrong, it can really go wrong. And the one thing I think in HR that is truly unique about HR is there has to be a little more risk mitigation than you'll see in other areas, right? So, you know, let it go wrong in gaming and things like that before we start to really get it right. So we haven't spent a whole lot of time there, but it will be really fascinating to see. And I agree with you. I think recruiting will probably be the first.
Right. It seems to make sense. Yeah, we're already seeing a lot of that on social media and Snapchat and other things. So yeah, cool. Very good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Other questions from the group?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Hi, Lloyd Fassett from Oregon. Are you familiar with John Hagel's concept of the infomediaries?
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, it's ringing a bell, and I can see that.
It sounds like I've heard it before, and it feels like something I should know, but no, tell me. And
you've heard it before. John Hagel is a consultant, longest out, I think with Deloitte for a long time. But Infomediaries was a book from either 99 or 2000 that people were going to own their own data and businesses were going to pay for access. It was a form of reverse advertising. It was pretty popular. And then he published a follow-up maybe 5 years ago, which is a blog post. He writes very long blog posts. But when you talk about data ownership, it's, to me, this idea of the infomediary coming back. The idea of the infomediary is that you're paid for information. So that's one thing. I think there's still a lot of value in looking at those original concepts. The other is that TechCrunch has an article today about seed and A round revenues dropping significantly over the last few years. Which is what we were talking, or was a topic a few minutes ago. But you might want to check that out. There's some good data behind it. That is very true. What you're saying.
Revenues or valuations?
Revenues is what they were looking at. It's an analysis of one of the venture capital databases, not Crunchbase, but the other one that's pretty well known that collects all the venture capital industry. Anyway, it's database. It speaks to what we were saying. You had the paradox. The paradox stories is right in the current of what the data is showing. $1 billion valuations at less than 100 million, and that's new. I saw it this morning before coming in here. The other thing, I actually have a question though, besides those two things to share.
Yeah, no, you got me intrigued on both of them. I got to go do some research when we hang out. But yeah, fire away your question.
Daos, where are you right now on the idea of Daos?
So if you're not familiar with the term, anybody, if you haven't heard the Daos, it's decentralized autonomous, I think is the
Organization. Yeah.
Organizations. I'm a huge fan of the concept. I think that, it's actually one of the areas where you see DAOs really starting to take hold is actually in the venture capital space. Because if you're not, for anybody's on the call, if you're not familiar with what the concept is, it's basically sort of an egalitarian approach to organizational design, right? You've got members of the organization that are essentially voting based on what are called smart contracts, which are rules of the organization, voting on the direction of that organization. And one of the things, and you're really seeing it start to take off in venture capital, right? And like angel investing and things like that, where you've got a group of people who come in, vote on making investments and things like that. So I think it's a super interesting concept. I love the idea of it personally. It just goes completely in line with sort of where I am philosophically. I think companies are a long way from using it, right? It reminds me very much of somebody is going to know the name of this. I completely just blanked on the name, but a few years ago, I think probably in the past 5 years, there was this movement within organizations, and it was pretty short-lived, and it kind of fizzled out pretty quickly, where there were like no titles and like no leaders and no work groups. Does anyone remember this? Like, I want to say like Zappos, I think was like the company that was kind of the most known on this front, right? Does anybody know what I'm talking about at all? Like, I'm trying to remember the name.
I think they also pioneered, or they were part of Unlimited Vacation. Same with Netflix.
Yeah. I have to, anyway, I can't remember the name of this, but it was this concept where basically the organization was entirely flat. It was only designed to run work groups. That's it. There were no titles. There were no anything. And everything was just a work group. That's it. And you kind of had this movement in that direction. Zappos was way out there in front. And DAOs really remind me of that concept a lot, right? Where when you're in a small working group, they can work really well. In a large company, it's going to be a while before you really, a really large group of people is having to vote on the direction of anything that's going on. It becomes enormously complicated. With a DAO, the concept there is you've got this thing called a smart contract, which means it's a rule. And everything needs to fit within those rules, right? So just think about a company and how many things you have to try to design in order to keep those parameters in place. But super cool concept. I love it. I definitely think there's going to be I actually just joined one. It's just really, so I don't know if anybody else on this call is a whiskey drinker. But okay, so we've got at least one person that's willing to admit it, in addition to myself. So there was one that was actually Pendleton whiskey, which is great whiskey. Actually started one, and it started with like an NFT that you could buy into, and then part of this was part of their DAO, and then in exchange for it, you can kind of help determine the way that they're sort of the like batches that they're going to create and stuff.
Wow.
But in all honesty, I did it because they also send you like 4 bottles of whiskey a quarter. So, cool concept, but fun to play with at this point.
A lot of people, it's probably not widely known, but Henry Ford had no titles when he started his first factories.
Yep.
It didn't scale, but it did ship. It worked for a while. They were moving stuff out. There's another DAO you might want to check out called Dinner DAO. So it's starting, there's one in Portland, there's one in New York, and they're seeding cities around the country. So it's people that are interested in DAOs, and I guess it's a way of splitting the dinner check, I guess. It's not, if you want to experience DAOs. But anyway, that's cropping.
That's right.
That's cropping up in metropolitan markets.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's great. I'll check it out for sure.
So, Greg, question for you on the team. You launched the two partners, and I saw the news that TinCup just joined in the past week or something like that. Do you see that going, in that direction, or is that just because you always wanted to work with TinCup? What, where's this going for your fund?
Well, yes and yes. Yes. So I've worked on and off with TinCup for 20 years. He was actually on my board at Checked way back, and has been a great friend of mine, for almost my entire career. So yes, any opportunity to work with him was an opportunity I was going to take, just because he's one of the smartest and most hilarious human beings I've ever met in my entire life. So, and if you know William, he just has a way of thinking that is unlike just about anybody you'll ever meet. So he's a great guy. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that William's helping us do is, and we will continue to do this, and it's something that, if there's anybody on the call that this is of interest to, by all means, reach out to me afterward, because one of the things that we are doing that's a really unique part of the fund itself is building out what we call our venture partner network, right? And a venture partner network, or our venture partner network, is basically, because we are a specialized fund and we're only investing around future of work, we're building out this network of professionals in the space, whether they're analysts or influencers or HR professionals, or executives in potential partner companies or acquirers or things like that, to really help the portfolio companies. A network that we can use to really help these portfolio companies kind of navigate the things that early stage companies do. Is my messaging right? Are there features in my product that need to get built? How do I get the door open at Workday because I need to integrate? These are the things that founders and early stage companies have to wrestle with all the time. And our venture partner network is really an opportunity for somebody, number one, to gain venture capital investment experience, because we work with our venture partners to take independent board seats, to help us with diligence, to do things like that. So it's a great learning experience. It's a great way to kind of see what is happening, what are the trends in emerging technologies. We have a call once a month where we'll kind of review the pipeline and things like that. Gives you an opportunity to say, hey, I saw this really, really interesting company. It gives you kind of your own venture platform, right? That, to refer a company into, and, and there's opportunities to get equity in some of these companies. If you take an independent board seat or you bring a deal in, there's opportunities to participate in some of what's called the carried interest, which is the way that venture capital firms make money. So it's a great, it's a great way if that's ever been anything of interest to you. So definitely, reach out to me afterward. I'm more than happy to talk to you about it. But so that's a really long answer to, yeah, I mean, we're going to continue to grow the team, right? This fund is about a $20 million fund. We have the capacity to do much larger investments than typical because we have a lot of co-investors that we can work with, to do deals. In our venture partner network is a really key part of growing out the capacity of the organization.
That's really exciting to hear, and there's lots of similar kind of movements out there, and some of the folks on the call. And certainly what everybody wants to hear or have happen, right? And, to that end, it's commercial time. So bear with me for a second, but in 3 weeks or just under 3 weeks, we'll have our next collaboration zone, which is going to be on the Partner Ecosystems Expo. And you just mentioned, hey, how do you, partner with Workday? Well, Trevor Brown, whose last day at Workday is today or maybe Monday, he's magically starting a consulting business, and he's going to be leading a panel with some other Workday partners and talk about that, and just, have a discussion group, if you will, similar to this, but on that topic. And that's just one of many great things that we're going to be covering. We'll have Oracle talking about their partner ecosystem, and how do you, if you want to, be part of it, have some open questions there as well as presentations. LinkedIn's going to be super interesting. I don't know how far it'll go, but hopefully further than where they're at today. And then the next day we're opening up with a keynote and Fireside Chat with Michael Wilczek, who you mentioned, Greg. People coming from outside the industry isn't necessarily bad. I remember Michael had zero experience, at least on his resume, in the HR space, but he's been there almost 8 years now. And, iSIM's just crushed it, right?
Mhm.
Just doing fantastic. So he's going to tell us some of the story, and then have one of his alliance team talk about how do you partner with iSIMS, what's the deal? And then, same thing with SAP. And if ADP can get their lawyers to sign off on it, they'll be there, and some of the other folks as well. So for those aren't already registered, please do. You might need a VIP code, but let me know. Make sure you get that. So Greg, back to you. Yeah, I'd love to hear more. Where do you think, your business will go in the next, couple of years? Do you think you'll stay in seed and early stage? Do you think you'll be looking at, B rounds and so forth, being a lead investor? Where do you see things going?
Yeah, our model right now is we are generally always going to be a lead investor for seed and Series A today. And that's from this fund. We'll be the lead investor in just about any deal we do. And the reason is because it's a differentiated model, right? We're very active investors in the companies that we invest in. We take board seats. I mentioned the venture partner network. We bring that venture partner network to bear. We've got operating partners that we bring in as well to really kind of surround the company and help give them the greatest possible chance of accelerating their growth, right? So in order to do that, in order to put that model to work, we need to be a lead investor in this fund. Where do we go from here? Like I said, this fund is about 20 million, which, in the realm of venture capital is like, not even that big, right? So, we'll raise another fund probably very soon after we get the first, at least half of this fund deployed. And that one will be larger, probably with more flexibility to do a little bit larger deal. But, the heart and soul of this business, myself and my partner, Ira, we're founders, right? I mean, the reason that I wanted to do this and step aside from running Outmatch and things like that was I didn't want to run a 300-400 person company. I wanted to be back at the really early stage where the heart and soul and innovation rests in these companies, right? And that's one-on-one with the founder, trying to bring a vision into the world, and that's what I love. That's what Ira loves. Those are the people I love to deal with. That's the energy that that we really feed off of. So, the late stage stuff, it's a little boring for you can make a lot of money, but it's you kind of lose that soul, and it's and that soul of the founder is something that that's the drug that we rely on to to fuel our growth. So that's a long way of saying we'll stay early stage.
That's great. Any other final questions before we would just switch to a couple of pieces of news? And of course, always looking for people's insights or points of view on the news then as well. Any other questions for Greg? No?
All right.
Good. Well, yeah, please stay on, Greg. There's a couple deals in the news that maybe you have something to say about it or not.
Sure. Yeah. Have to stay
bring
on.
up our knowledge base, and if I get the right screen, I lost my green box. Are you seeing the knowledge base?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
We are.
Cool. Actually, let me also stop recording in case anybody wants to speak frankly. All right.